Good at multitasking, so while we're going to do a switch of the name tags, I'm going to start asking that the next panelists come and join me on the stage. At this point, while we're switching the panelists, anyone that's standing in the back, there's some seats at the front, although I do love it when I see a standing room only session. Joining me on stage for our second panel is our moderator, Kengatharan, Managing Partner of Atheneos Venture, USA. I'll ask you to hold your applause until I get everyone on stage. If I can also have joining on stage, Ioana Fricu, Chief Operating Officer at Beyond Enterprises, Chief Operating Officer at Under Development Office from Romania. Can we also have on stage Jason Fishman, Senior VP, Digital Strategy at Digital Niche Agency, and also advisor for Beyond Enterprises from the US. And if we can have on stage Mohammed Iman Ozer, General Manager of Al Baraka Asset Management from Turkey. Okay, I think we did that quite well. Over to you, Ken.
Great, thank you. Just want to thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to run this panel. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves, just their name and affiliation, because the biography is on the documents that's been provided, and then what area of fintech that you are involved in. So we'll start with you, Emin.
Okay, I have been working in the capital markets for over 27 years. And for over 15 years, I've been in the brokerage industry. And then I had a chance to serve as a regulatory body in the capital markets board. And it was an opportunity to see the other side of the table. Now I'm lucky enough to turn back to the industry, and I'm the general manager of the Al Baraka Portfolio Management Company. And we are issuing the venture capital funds. So one of the name of the funds is actually Fintech. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Emin. Jason?
How you guys doing? My name is Jason Fishman. I'm a marketer. I run a growth agency out of Los Angeles, California. Also work with Beyond Enterprises as an advisor. Over the past 5 years, I've worked with over 250 startups, over 100 of which on fundraising initiatives, and have worked with fintech portals directly on these type of campaigns. I'm here to bring my insights and experience to the conversation in terms of obstacles I've seen these projects struggle with in terms of overall growth model and ongoing testing that we're doing to find the best ways to really get proper user adoption.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Ioana?
I'm Ioana Frâncu. I am the Chief Operations Officer of Beyond Enterprises and Under Development Office. I think I'm actually the most disruptive in this panel. I'm just 25, so it's gonna get interesting. And I'm really good at mixing tech and regulatory frameworks for disruptive startups in the blockchain industry. I've been doing machine learning and blockchain development for a whole lot of time now, and I'm part of the Forbes 30 Under 30 batch of 2017.
Great. Thanks, Ioana. Let's get a show of hands. Who has heard of M-Pesa? Okay. All right. Before I get there, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. So I trained as a scientist in London and also at Stanford. Over the last 20 years, I've set up multiple companies. My foray into fintech was I filed an early patent on micropayment in 1997 using the internet. And ever since, I've been very interested in this space, especially with the arrival of digital ledger technologies, a la blockchain, etc. I think it's going to be an exciting area going forward. The reason why I mentioned M-Pesa is because it was actually invented by a Kenyan student working at Moi University in 2007. The software that related to its enabling of payment systems using a cell phone without the banking. In fact, you might want to look into this sometime when you get a chance. This is one of the main reasons why Zuckerberg is very much interested in payment systems. WeChat and all these are now allowing folks to pay without the need for banks, etc., which I believe is the ultimate goal. What that also tells you is that you don't need to be in Silicon Valley and be raising a lot of money to be creating innovative technologies. And M-Pesa is a great example of that. Now, of course, our topic is how do you scale up and what are the key areas? I think our panel really represents the key areas, which is technology, marketing, and funding. So let's start with the technology. It'll be good if you could explain what a digital ledger technology is and what are the big disruptive forces that is introducing into fintech, Ivana.
Of course. So most of you have not heard the digital ledger technology term as much as you have heard of blockchain, which is its other name. And it has been on everyone's lips for the past 2 or 3 years. And we've seen a lot of projects that gathered funding and tried to disrupt the payments industry. The main difference between this technology and the ones that we are used to so far is the fact that there's no central authority that decides who, what, and in how much time receives anything. So basically, the distributed ledger technology is very interesting in the field of payments because it can fasten up the way that we transfer money from one side to the other, and it can also help track digital assets, it can also help track identities, so on and so forth. So any kind of digital asset that needs to be identified on its own can be encrypted and stored on the blockchain. The main disruptive thing is that now we do not need a third party to hold the truth of what we're doing. Right now, I know that my name is Ioana Alexandra Frâncu because my government holds this name in a database where my parents have said that this is my name, right? But right now, it's funny, in my country they want to change a letter in the alphabet, so my name will be Ioana Alexandra Francu from next year. So basically, a third party decided that my name will change, right? They hold the truth. Well, this can cause a lot of trouble because in this way we can fake identities or we can, as a bank, decide to transfer or not money. And the change with the digital ledger is that once my parents decide that my name is Ioana Alexandra Frâncu, it will be like this forever. No one will come and say, no, your name is different, and I'm going to decide that. No, they have decided that on the blockchain, and it will be like this forever. This is just one example. Basically, it is a simpler way to hold the truth about the transaction and to not tamper with it in the future from malveillant reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting that you touched on, as a first thing, Ivana, the identity. Because I think knowing your customer, or KYC, which is something that you may have heard that as an abbreviation, is key part of the fintech arena. And I think anyone who believes that it needs to be more like a cash where you don't need to know the person who's transacting, I think is not going to get where they need to scale the companies. Because even the ones in the fintech that have succeeded very well, whether it be Robinhood, Coinbase, others, they follow the rules that are important when it comes to banking, whether it be know your customer or anti-money laundering, AML. So in that respect, how do you see the blockchain-related technologies or digital ledger technology, where blockchain is just one component of it, is going to revolutionize the areas that you are working in?
Yeah, even in the finance, in the capital markets, the blockchain is important because the stock exchanges are working on it to easily transfer the stocks and other stuff from one person to another. And in Turkey especially, we have a central registry agency. And this agency is digitized all the stocks and the fund certificates in Turkey. And we have good infrastructure in order to pass the blockchain. And I know that they are working on it. Hopefully, we can be one of the first countries use blockchain in the stock exchange and the central registry agency.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting area that you've talked about, because that's where my biggest interest when it comes to DLT is, which is converting your stock certificate in a small company into a token, and then using that as a mechanism for anyone to buy and sell your shares. I think that is the absolute future, because especially in healthcare, you want people around the world to participate in the early stages of fundraising, because right now in healthcare, Series A, B, they're all institutional. By the time these companies go public, the public markets are saying that's too expensive. I don't want to get involved. Now the tokenization of share certificate, it's already done. That's how NASDAQ, NYSE do settlements as part of the way they conduct their settlement of share trading. Now, if that is offered globally, and you have a really different area, and this is the advent of what people call STO, so securitized token offering, which is the natural evolution to the old I word, which I hate when using it because that doesn't represent what ultimately there's a benefit. Jason, of course, marketing and ability to get customers or users to sign up is one of the biggest areas, especially if you're a startup, your brand is not known, you're asking for all sorts of identity, passport, number, license number. I mean, how do you convince people to part with that when you are a startup in the fintech arena?
Absolutely, and I see it often overlooked in these type of conversations when looking at the business plan, when looking at the technology, and frankly, amazing technology passes through my desk, and I'll see these companies with very little eyeballs on them. Being able to convey the value of their product, the value of their offering, whether it's in the early stages in the fundraising process or more so during user acquisition, it needs to be very clear. What is the value? Next, trust. So much of the internet is based on building trust. People not simply believe what they see online. So being able to showcase social proof, logos, writers, influencers who endorse this experience, and leading into that next, the user experience. I've had countless conversations with friends, family, who have gotten stuck on exchanges and other types of fintech platforms. If they don't trust the platform itself, they don't feel comfortable uploading photos of their documentation of today's date in the mirror and everything to that extent. It goes back to that old saying, I only invest in things that I trust. I'm certainly not going to invest on a platform I don't trust. So being able to have that conveyed on the actual user experience itself can be the make or break in terms of a successful company.
Yeah, and in that respect, do you think the technology is developed enough where even a startup can offer ultimate guarantee that there won't be any identity theft, etc.?
My honest answer is that the technology will never be ready to show that there cannot be an identity theft. Every time we develop something, someone else comes and tries to break it, and this is how our technology evolves, right? If people would not falsify credit cards, now we wouldn't have the 3D secure. If passports would have not been falsified so easily, now we wouldn't have had the chips. So in each vertical of technology, I would like to thank the people that break it because it allows us to make it better. For each software that comes on the market, at least 100 tries of breaking it appear in the next hours or days. So when it comes to identity theft and how we conform identities, there are numerous ways in which we can do it. Right now, there are companies that provide this as a software as a service platform, like Onfido does or other companies. And startups use them because it allows them to scale fast. You don't want to build your internal KYC and AML infrastructure if you can buy it as a SaaS, right? Because I'd rather pay €5 per verification than pay 80,000 euros just to make the software, and then 100,000 euros just to hire one person for a year to do that.
That's a good point.
I'd like to pay 500 euros or 5,000 per month, depending on the volume of transaction I have, just as I do with the Amazon Web Services for my servers. Basically, this allows me to get the verification of people. Sometimes I don't even have to store the data, so the liability falls under the SaaS responsibility, and also allows me to scale faster. So each time we can outsource these kind of things, we benefit from the fact that we also outsource part of the liability. And data will always be stolen. So
So that's
yeah.
like having a third party which is a recognized brand doing the
Yeah.
verification. Yeah, it reminds me 20, 25 years ago when, internet, Netscape was the thing and they were asking for credit card information. Very few people were, willing to do that until VeriSign came along and said, yeah, according to our verification, this site is safe. You can put your credit card information. And then the credit card company said, okay, we will reimburse if there was a fraudulent transaction. And that kind of mechanism needs to be in place, right? Just any questions from the audience on, any burning topics that you wanted to cover on the fintech side? Go ahead, please.
I just want to come back on the digital identity thing. And one of the biggest problems is most startups try to solve it purely on a technical level. They try to put it on a blockchain, whatever, but in the end the question is always, if it goes wrong, who is actually liable and who helps me recover my identity? And in many cases there are no good answers yet, because the small startups, they cannot cover the losses because they can't insure themselves, they don't have enough funding to do it directly, so in most cases no one does it. And
That's a very
crucial point to scale it up, because you don't get a critical business onto it if nobody's really liable for it.
That's a very, very good point. In fact, if it's monetary transfer, you just reimburse the person and say, here's your loss. But, there's a company in the US called LifeLock, which guarantees people that their identity, if it's stolen, they'll, do everything necessary to, get it back or something to that effect. I don't know if that similar system could be used to answer your question.
Once your identity is stolen, you cannot get it back. The data is out there already. They saved it on a hard disk, so it's there. You cannot undo that action. Regarding the use of blockchain in digital identity that you mentioned, I am actually working right now with the largest digital signature provider in my country, the one that directly supplies the digital signatures of the government, to enable people to perform KYC based on the hashes of their encrypted data on the Ethereum chain. It was the only viable method to not store data on a public blockchain and to not have it decrypted that easy. But there are a lot of infrastructure challenges that we have faced so far, mainly because it really matters where you deploy the servers, it really matters if the data is on someone's phone or not, so on and so forth. And also the legislation that we are facing in Romania for this kind of project is very outdated, so it's a challenge to put these things together and work. But at the moment, if I go to a startup and give them my credit card data and I see that they are doing all the checks internally or my identity data, I would feel a lack of trust. When I started using Revolut, how many of you have used Revolut from here so far? So quite a lot of people. When I saw that Onfido is doing the verification, I was super happy. When I also used the Monese, again, there was a third party doing the verification. A third party that I knew it was a company whose core business was doing the verification. So this is why I'm saying that everything should be outsourced as much as possible. If you don't try to outsource the things that are not your core business, then you will be liable for data breaches, even if you're doing, file transfers. And you cannot cover that because your insurance will never cover data breaches if you're just doing, transfers of photos between people.
I mean, it's basically a gray area, right? I mean, that's ultimately that's what it is. Emin, just to switch gear, obviously for growth, funding is important. And when we talked outside, you had some innovative funding strategies within the restrictions that you have for your firm. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, actually, I'm from Albaraka Portfolio Management Company, which is a subsidiary of Albaraka Türk Participation Bank. In Turkey, the terminology for Islamic bank is participation bank. What's the difference? The difference is that the participation banks can invest in the companies with profit and loss sharing partnerships, so they can directly fund equity funding. They can provide equity funding rather than credit funding compared to the conventional banks. And this creates a potential for startups also. We in the Albaraka Türk, we have a garage incubation and acceleration center which provides mentor and other services to the startups which enable a bank to create a synergy in fintech industry. And as a portfolio management company, we are securitizing the investments under the venture capital fund structure, and we are planning to list them in the stock exchange. We already did it for the real estate investment funds, and provide liquidity so that especially pension funds can easily buy and sell and trade venture capital funds easily by the stock exchange. That's our plan.
Yeah, it's actually quite good that you're using the real estate model to securitize startups in the fintech, which I'd never heard of it, which is quite smart. Any questions for the panelists on the rapidly growing and starting companies in the fintech space? Otherwise, we'll go to final statements. What do you think you're excited about? Thinking about the future in the next 5-10 years in this space?
Actually, the crowdfunding is not regulated in Turkey yet, but the regulatory body is preparing to launch the regulation. And I think the crowdfunding platforms will be quite popular in Turkey, because I know the individual investors' expectations to invest in this kind of micro-scale businesses, and that's what excites me most. And I think there will be a great opportunity for fintech companies to create that kind of platforms that works in the crowdfunding business.
Great, thanks, Eamon. Jason, 20 seconds.
Overall growth, as there's more trust in the trade and sale of digital assets, leveraging fintech platforms, the way to overall exchange value between two individuals, the way that groups which are currently sidelining will be getting involved, and the way that audiences will be more public, which excites me on the marketing side, is really what I'm looking forward to most.
Excellent. Ivana?
What I'm most confident about is in asset digitization and tokenization, because most assets that we see today, especially expensive ones, will have a digital twin that will prove if they are sourced ethically, if they have been obtained through ethical methods, or if the logistical chain has been a clean one. So I'm really looking at seeing all our cars, all our objects, and everything that we have of value also saved in some way on a public or private ledger, as well as seeing shareholder certificates and entire stock markets moving there, because the future, based on the last 30-40 years, is facing digitization in all directions. So basically any startups that do food delivery or that package stuff are dead from my point of view. Yeah. I'm just looking at digital ones.
Excellent. And my view, just in addition to my colleagues, asset digitization, securitization, but also that the competition come from anywhere on the planet. M-Pesa is a great example, circling back to M-Pesa, that you don't need to be in Silicon Valley raising millions of dollars to start a company in the fintech. And with that, I want to thank the panelists for a great discussion.
A round of applause, please. Thank you very much, panelists. We will continue.